Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Expire Show, brought to you by Science Centre Singapore, the Singapore Institute of Technology and Neo Aeronautics. Now, we all know that the digital economy and digitalization is a very important thing, and it further accelerates during these difficult pandemic times. So, company has to transform. But what does digitization mean, or what does digital transformation means? Can the various functions be transformed in such a way that you can make your work carry on in the pandemic world, or what we call right now work from home? So tonight we're going to explore this, especially in software as a service or as a platform, with Eugene from StaffAny. So let's go to talk to Eugene. All right, Eugene, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How about you, Prof?
I'm fine. And we all are working from home, now work from studio, which is good. So maybe you want to introduce yourself and what you do, and then we can enter into a conversation.
Sure. So yeah, thanks, Prof, for the intro. I think it's an amazing introduction, right? You guys got there with the cool vehicle there. Yeah, so maybe I can give myself a quick introduction, straight to the audience, right? Super excited to be sharing all this with you guys. Then, yeah, let me start with the introduction. Yeah, so thanks for having me on this Aspire show, and hopefully through this show I'm able to inspire you guys back there behind your screens. Yeah, so this is a little bit about me. So I used to be from NUS Business School, right? And during my time in NUS, I went to try 3 ventures on my own, and I also went to Shanghai for a year to experience the NOC program, right? And currently I'm leading revenue for StaffAny, where my portfolio encompasses the SDR, sales, marketing, and customer success. Okay, so a little bit more about me is that these are 3 key values that I always believe in. In all the the millennials, right? We call it as a GTG, right? Good to go, right? But for me, it's really about gratitude, teamwork, and growth. And I think that these 3 key things are very important in life, and this is something that hopefully, throughout my journey, I'm able to also exemplify to the people that I'm working with. Okay, so this is a bit about us. So I'm from StaffAny, and what we want to do is that we want to be the operating system for the blue collar workforce, right? So what does this really mean? It's more towards like, you guys are using your Windows and Mac, you guys have certain OS, right? Yeah, we want to be the OS for the blue collar workforce. And these are some of the, I would say, happy users that we are serving. So you guys enjoy your burgers. So sometimes if you go to Shake Shack, you can probably see some of them are using us, or whenever you guys are drinking your bubble tea, right? You can see the LiHo people using us. Okay, so maybe a bit of a company intro is that currently we are probably about headcount about 20-25 packs of different nationalities. So that is where we are at this point of time, and we are in probably 6 different markets, such as Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, Vietnam, and Thailand. Yep, so that is where we are currently. So a bit more about what we do is that we address, I wouldn't use so much of these slides, but for us, we address a lot of the, I would say, the challenges that a lot of the brick and mortar stores are experiencing. Right, first, one of it would be probably the admin time spent on scheduling their guys. At the same time, also spent on reconciliation all the different hours. Right, so all these slides is showing more towards how painful it is to do on the schedule end. Next is more towards about performance, right? Currently, managing blue collar workforce is not that simple. There'll be no shows, there'll be a lateness, right? But how can we help them to perform all this better through data? And lastly, it's about things are being done very manually now, right? Because I believe some of you guys who are behind the screen, probably you guys have been trying to work on part-time job before, right? Whereby a lot of these time attendance are being done manually, and all this results to errors. So for us, that's what we do. We try to eradicate all of these mistakes. Yep, so a quick thing about how it works is that what we do is that we make scheduling more data driven by providing cost information for them to do the schedule, so they can optimize manpower where it should be. Secondly, we provide a live and real-time information, because we are very cloud-based, right? So that's where information and data can be accessed easily. Yep, and lastly, we automate all the gathering all the information in terms of the reports side of things, right? Whereby now we integrate the schedule together with the actual time attendance, right? That's how we can digitalize everything. Yep. So this is a short video, but I will be showing you guys through this session because ultimately it's about discussion, right? So for those who are interested, you guys can ping me at the end of the session. So let me skip this. Yep. So these are some of our happy users, right? Like our Dimbula, Kiosk Collective, who owns Pezzo and Crave Nasi Lemak, and also T3 Cafe. If you love all those kind of desserts, do visit them. Yep. These are some of the people who have been supporting us through this journey as well. And yeah, so for those who enjoy this session, right, at the end of the session, you guys are interested for, I would say, full-time opportunity in sales and marketing, feel free to ping me too. Right. Yeah, so I didn't take too much on the introduction, and looking forward to make this a fruitful discussion for you guys.
Okay, right. So maybe we can start with about you first, right?
Oh, about me, okay, about me again. I thought I shared about me already.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I understand that you
Right.
go on this overseas, what do you call it? NUS overseas college,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So actually, what motivates you to go into this kind of overseas immersion experience, and what do you
Right.
gain from there?
Right. So I would say one of the guiding principles that led me to go for this NUS overseas college program, right, is that firstly, I think all along I've always wanted to try something on my own.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that this program provides me with that platform and opportunity to do that because it's very focused on entrepreneurship as a team. So I would say that this program, when we went for this program, we need to intern at a startup, right? And I think that will give me the best first-hand experience in terms of learning of the ropes of how people do business and how do they scale businesses, right?
Okay.
And I think that it has been a remarkable experience, right? I went to China, I went to Shanghai, right?
Yeah.
And I worked at a really local company. But that's where I get to see the different cultural differences in terms of doing business and their work ethics. But I would say that in terms of what did I really get out of it, I think there's three key things. Firstly, how I get to learn how to run a business in a more of a SME style, right? How the boss thinks, because I usually stay back with him. I usually the last one with him there, right? That's where I really get to absorb and learn a lot of knowledge from him. Secondly, is to understand how smaller companies build their processes, and lastly, is about how they make decisions. Yeah, so I think these are three key things that I learned through this experience.
Okay, so you go to Shanghai and then you have this entrepreneur experience, right? But I see that your degree is in finance.
Right.
Finance is a very lucrative job, right? So everybody loves finance, so make a lot of money. So why didn't you go into finance?
Right, I think this is a question that a lot of my friends also ask me, right?
Yeah.
And yes, this school I can always go to one financial industry, right?
Yeah.
However, I think for me, especially since we are still young, right, there's two things that I should try to optimize for. First is growth. Second is impact. I'm not saying that finance industry is bad. I always think it's also a good industry to be in terms of livelihood, right? Of course, there will also be stress in different aspects. But I feel that I want to be able to run my own stuff to create that kind of growth trajectory that I might not get elsewhere, right? And secondly, it's about the impact, right? Because once we're in this startup journey, right, that we want to scale even further, right, that's how you can impact more people. You might not be impacting people directly, right, but through the kind of product and services that you have, right, that is how you can scale your impact across the world. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about our entrepreneur journey, right? Starting with how actually do you start? I mean, does the idea just boom, comes like that, or you do like traditional business school research, or how this idea came about and you really believe in it?
Right. So maybe I can share the story about how all this started.
Yes.
Because actually one of my co-founder, Jensen, before uni, he used to run a bar.
Okay.
Right. And when he was running the bar, he was managing hourly workers, right? A lot of labor that he's trying to manage. Then on top of that, last time he used Excel to schedule, right? Then afterwards, when he guys come for their work, they use a biometric, right? Then at the end of the month, he must reconcile all these hours, which is super painful. But on top of all these like human management and even like all these admin work, right? He also needs to bring sales, right? Because ultimately he's in charge of the P&L also, right? Because running a bar.
Yeah.
And that is where he realized, wow, all these admin work are very painful. Why not I can save time on all of these, right? I can spend time on building the business, right? So that was a thought that he had. But to fast forward 3 years later, cause that is where my 3 other co-founders, Kai and Jeremy also, and Jensen, they went to Silicon Valley for a year.
Okay.
That's where they realized a lot of, I would say, F&B are using a technology to optimize the operations. So after coming back, I went to China, right? Then we met up, right? Then that is where we were thinking, what could we do next, right, in our lives? And that is where Jensen recalled of this problem of his, and he connect the dots of what he had learned in the Bay Area. Then that is how StaffAny happened. But of course, at the initial phase, before we even venture into this idea, right, we went to take a look at the market first, trying to observe a bit, right, and realize that the majority of F&Bs in Singapore, even Malaysia and Indonesia, they are still using Excel, right, still using a punch card or biometric. And that is like, think for us, this could be an opportunity for us to double down and build this ecosystem and technology in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's through personal experience.
Yeah, personal experience and also market gap.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think the what's the criteria? And say, okay, this might be a problem to solve. And
Right.
How do you size it and say, I'm going to spend the next 5 years of my life solving this problem, right? What would be the criteria?
Right. So I think one of the criteria is also in terms of a scale.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, probably at the start, you must always evaluate on what is the rough market size, right?
Yes.
So first you kind of identify a gap first already. Then now is to see how big of a problem this is, right? Then if you were to do some rough, cause there's a lot of information that can be gotten online, right? Like how many F&Bs are there in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, right? Then you roughly can do some kind of extrapolation of the scale, right? And since that maybe, cause we can't interview everybody, maybe a sample size of 100, right? Then let's say 80% of them say that they don't have anything now. Then that is roughly where you can do a rough sizing of the potential market. And it's huge. I think F&B is something that every country will have, and every country also need, because that is how people get their food.
So your problems are actually constraints to SMEs or rather the F&B that actually always have part-time workers.
I would say that's partially.
Okay.
Yeah. So for us, we also do for full-timers, right? Because ultimately, how we help companies is any kind of employers that has employees with variable pay based on timing. Because what we do is we capture it accurately and prevent those kind of time theft. And all these variable pay will be based on the hours.
Okay.
So I would say at the start, of course, based on my co-founder Jensen, real experience in F&B, that's our initial beachhead starting point, right? But along the way, that's where we realized that, hey, actually it's not only an F&B problem, right? So recently we also have people like Pandora coming up, like Phoon Huat. Yeah, so we're actually having more, I would say, companies of other industries taking up and joining us. Yeah.
So okay, how actually you start? You have 5 person?
4 of us.
You have 4 founders, right?
Yeah.
Co-founders. And then do you remember on the day you decided, okay, when you start or whatever? They were going to put it on more money or what?
Right. So actually, we started in 2018. Then I think one of the interesting thing that probably everyone who wants to runs a company will need to do it, right? It's really the grind work, right? That's why we do a door-to-door, try to get our first 10 customers. I think once you have that first 10 customers, right, that is kind of like a validation already.
Yeah.
Right. It cannot be like you not 1 year and then you get 0, right? Then that one is a bit. It could work out, but it might not be the highest probability. So I think one of the triggers is when we do a lot of the door-to-door. I can remember going door-to-door at Telok Ayer almost every day, just knocking on doors, right, to find the right person. And then once we have our first 10 paying customers, then to us, I think this could be it, because that is where people start paying. That means that's a real problem to be solved.
So you completely bootstrap?
For us, we are pretty fortunate whereby we did have some angel funding at the start. Yeah.
How you manage to do it? You just tell people and they say, okay, we are angel, we give you money.
Right. So I think in terms of this story, I think Jensen, when he was at the Bay Area, he met one of our first investors. Yeah, pretty interesting. Until now, he's still supporting us, called Kenji. He's also running his own startup now. So
he's a Singaporean or is in California?
He's not at Cali.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So for him, it's pretty cool. So he used to run his own HR tech in Japan, and he managed to exit it So now he's also venturing onto his own, I would say, adventure. At the same time, also investing in startups. So that is where our first, I would say, first support came in.
So maybe let's talk about. So you identify the problem. You have money. You have a group of people.
Right.
Can you talk about the challenges in product development?
Right.
Yeah.
I would say one of the challenges of a product development, right, especially for we're not the most experienced people, of course, right, it's probably in terms of how we think at the start, right. Well, of course we are a bit more junior at the start, right. That's why there will be times whereby we might not be able to make the best decisions, but along time these are things that will improve, because ultimately when you're in the startup, right, we need to grow faster and be better. So this is probably one of the challenges at the start of product development. Then I think another one that we face at the start is more towards we have a lot of assumptions, right, before validation. They think, hey, maybe this is the way to go about it, right? Then that is where you build something, then you realize, hey, actually that is not what the market really wants. Because when we just started out, we built a scheduling tool first on mobile, right? It's right, hey, maybe I can sell, right? But after a while, we realize that the market is more concerned about accuracy of the data, of the actual schedule, and the actual time attendance.
Okay.
That's where we realize, okay, probably how we run it, we should do more validation instead of just like coming up with something straight. So through all this experience, right, that also improves our acumen in terms of how we do hypothesis testing, and also I would say crafting the solution.
So since you don't have experience, right, and you come out and you start everything, right? So this is a very interesting question. This is how much you learn in school is applicable to actually when you start.
Prof, ask me a challenging question. Of course, I might say in school I also learned some stuff, right? Because Prof here actually taught me before in a school.
I'm not trying to take the test.
right. But I would say that although I do hear of people saying that probably in schools, right, you might not be able to find things that is very applicable. I will offer a different perspective actually. Yeah, I would think that what we learn in school, right, could be applicable to running a business also. I think one of the key things here is more towards the frameworks.
Okay.
Right. Like for example, how we think about stuff. I think schools provide us with good frameworks to use in our work life. Just that we probably might have overlooked it.
Okay. Good. So maybe recount your experience of employing the very first staff.
Right.
How do you all decide, and how do you choose?
Right. So I think in employing of the, I think there's three key things to look at for this. First is whether will this staff complement our skill set. That's the first one. Secondly is to know how hungry this person is. Right? Because not say like very hungry, like eating, but it's more towards the drive and determination. Because being in a startup, to be honest, it's not the best paying job, right?
Okay.
You can work long hours and you might not have the best pay, right? So that person needs to be driven and hungry enough. And lastly is a cultural fit. Whether how can we communicate and work with each other well? Whether do we enjoy each other humor, right? Because ultimately, a startup is a long journey. It's not easy, so we need that kind of I would say cultural and emotional kind of community among ourselves to conquer all the different roadblocks and challenges ahead.
Okay, so I think recruiting staff is easy, right? So we have a requirement, we advertise or we promote, and then somebody comes and we interview. We're happy, then we recruit, right? Can you recount your first experience on terminating somebody?
Right. Wow, this is a really hard question. Of course, at best, right, we will try not to terminate anyone, right? But of course, I would say that through this journey, right, there are instances whereby unfortunate circumstances that we need to terminate people, right? But usually it's not because of their character, right? It's more towards the role fit, right? So I can especially in the sales and quite managing sales, right? Because that is where most of the movement will come. Those who are in the sales will probably know that, right? I think the earlier experience is more towards I would say maybe earlier founders might make is probably not being fast enough in making the termination decision.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is something that I also learned in this journey.
Yeah.
Right, and I think one of the key learning points here in terms of those who are going to be management in the future is that the termination is always not the best thing, right? But it's about how we communicate the chance across to that individual. I think that is really key, which I didn't do very well, especially for the first instance when this happened.
So what are the emotional experience?
Well, I think it was a crazy experience, man. I think it was a crazy experience because ultimately, whoever who are on board this journey with us, right, we do have some, I would say, attachment to them also, right? Because I always believe that it's not only like I want you and you must come, right? It's also acceptance on their end to take this risk with us, right? So if, let's say, especially for the earlier case when that incident happened, I'll feel really bad about it, because I don't think that it's failure on his end. I think it's a failure on my end also, right? Because how well your teammates perform, right, also depends on how well the leader cultivates him or give him or her the opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, so I think the first experience was really bad, I would think, emotionally, but most importantly is that we bounce back from it. We don't burn bridges. We still maintain that relationship and we move forward.
All right, so you go from 4 founders to now 20 people, right?
Yeah.
And I know that they're all Singaporeans,
No, it's a mixture.
but all residents, right? In Singapore?
No, we have people overseas also.
Oh, they're overseas.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but there are two things, right? First, growing from 4 founders to 20% is actually quite substantial, right? Because you like times 4 times your
4 to 5 times.
Yeah. Do you all do anything different when you're all growing? Structuring, reporting, communication.
Right. So I would say that probably at the start, right? But also would think that it's more towards the stage of the company maturity.
Yeah.
So probably at the start when you're still a fresher, right?
Yeah.
Almost everyone will touch a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Right. That is where we are more of a generalist. Maybe that's maybe from the 1 to 10, right? But once we are hitting like from 10 to 20, right? That is where we have found product market fit. We're trying to scale the team ready. That's where more specialization in each department will happen. Like for example, at the start, probably the first, maybe the 6 of us, right? The early guys, like 6 of us, right? What happened is that probably all of us will be involved in each of the department somehow.
Okay.
Right. Let's say when you're having a product sprint, right? Even I will be involved, right? But as the company grows bigger, right, at the stage whereby we have found product market fit, we're trying to scale. That is where specialization of departments come in. That's where we have the sales team, we have the marketing team, the customer success team, we got the product team, we got the design team, we got the engineering team, we got the QA team.
So at what point, at what numbers you start having this department?
I think once we have more than 10,
okay,
right, and we are thinking of a scaling, that is where focus will need to come in, right? Because being a jack of all trades, you'll be a master of none, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to do that particular function well, that is where all these split happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now come to your job designation, right? Which is a appointment we don't normally see in big companies.
Right. This is the Chief Revenue Officer.
Yeah, Chief Revenue Officer.
Yeah.
Sounds. I think big company will be Sales Director.
Right.
Okay. Why you call Revenue Officer rather than Chief of Sales or whatever?
Right. So I think that to me, title is not the most important thing. Ultimately, it's more towards what is the meaning behind this.
Yeah.
Right. Because how we operate is more towards the revenue side will be in charge of the. Because when we talk about just sales itself, right, it might be isolated, right? It might not touch maybe marketing or customer success or biz ops, right? So that's why this we use it as a revenue. Because revenue, basically everything that touches, right, money in and money out, right, would be parked under this department. So it's easier, I would say. More of optics side of things.
Yeah, I mean the good thing about small little company is your own company is you don't care about all the designation, right? What's important is what's the job, right? So you
it's more of the what's the responsibility behind this rather than what's the title. Because a title don't really matter,
All right. So there's a question that's related to this Chief Revenue Officer thing. How do you convince a potential customer to onboard StaffAny? Let me be your customer.
Right.
So it's like a sales call.
Okay, sales. Wow, do real sales test now. Okay. So maybe about this, I think it's like in every kind of sales situation, right? It's more towards right understanding their needs. I think that is really key, right? Because technically, if you understand their needs, right, there's a real problem that you're going to solve. Right, that is about the amount already, and that's where the negotiation will come in. Yeah, so I would say, how do you convince? Right, really, it's not about convincing them. It's about solving their problem.
Okay.
Right, because if we think about,
Alright, I think that's a very important thing, right? It's not how to sell, but
how to understand.
we always value what value will solve their problems.
Correct. Because if you're selling, right, people means when I come into a call with you, I'll just say, hey, Prof, my this one good, right? But we're talking about, and that's like convincing, right? But you're talking about a value adding, right? The first thing that you will do is, hey, Prof, actually want to share with you what's your current situation like in your company, right? Hey, what's your current process? Okay, based on this process, what are some of the issues you are facing? And all these issues will be the value adding.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a confusion between marketing and sales, right? And then a lot of people then start looking at, oh, marketing, what is marketing? Marketing, oh, I got the 4 P's of marketing, pricing, and blah, 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 blah. And then sales is the one who, get the customers to sign the check or give you swap the credit card.
Right.
And I have this interesting experience, right? When I was much younger, we all know that certain car, right? Certain car, it's like the tauke car, the boss car.
Right.
And the boss car, so the tauke will go and see, the car is not even there, they show you the brochure, and they sign the checkbook already, right? So it was like, if you do your marketing properly, you actually don't need to do sales. Correct?
Right.
It means you understand the customer problems, you come up with solutions, and of course you need to build a brand, but certainly you don't need to push the customer to sign up if you really understand what's the problem that they're facing. Okay, good. But one of the issue in the modern world about software as a service, right, is that the onboarding cannot be too laborious.
Yes.
Right? So you cannot be good at convincing, and in order to scale, and software as a service, main thing is about scaling, right? Is scaling got to be so automatic. How do you actually design that?
Right. So I think one of the key thing here, right, is to have that self-serve element in mind, right, when we are trying to do our design process in terms of building the product, right? So in order to do that, right, is how can you see the product is like a funnel also, right?
Yeah.
Onboarding is the first part, right? So it's about investing resources into this earlier part of the funnel to solve it, right? And I think a lot of this also comes in terms of like having that kind of like I would say research interviews, product interviews with I would say non-users, right? Because that is where you have the true test of whether your product is self-servable or not. Yeah, so I think it's about investing resources and being intentional that this self-serve process is important. So that when we design product that time, right, we have all these thinking in place. Yeah.
Okay. So we talk about like sales funnel network things that we call AIDA, which is what we learn, right? So maybe the next question is important, right? Which is framework. So this question is about what is the framework that you felt was most applicable to business? What kind of business framework that you learned that you actually use in your business?
I wouldn't put it as directly from or uni or whatever, right? But one of the frameworks that I like to use, I like to use two things. First, for more operational needs, right? I like to look at the sales funnel.
Yeah.
So usually we have I would say the top of the funnel, middle funnel, and bottom of funnel, right? And I'll try to monitor the conversion rates. So whenever a conversion rate is too far off, right, that is where I know what I need to fix. Yeah. Right. But the other one that probably is more interesting, I would say, for running a SaaS business, I look at sales efficiency ratio, which is basically your new ARR divided by the sales and marketing cost. Because this tells me how efficient am I running the revenue team. For example, if it's a 1, right, let's say my sales efficiency ratio is a 1, that means for every dollar I put in sales and marketing, I get $1 of revenue. Right. And being in a SaaS business that's recurring, right, that means technically my payback period is 1 year. Right, so that means if I were to do this, that means my second year I will have it's a building blocks. So usually I like to use a lot of sales efficiency ratio for running the business.
So a lot of people actually use like CAC, LTV, which is customer acquisition cost and long-term value of the customer.
Yeah.
Do you do that?
Yeah, I do that also. I do that also.
So how? Give me an example. How you assess this, or how you compute this?
Right. So I think for all these formulas, it can be found online. Right. So usually, I think the main thing, instead of using a fanciful matrix, right, or customer acquisition cost, right, basically what it tells us is just how much we spend, right, to get a customer, as right, in the more layman terms, right. Then LTV, right, is more towards how long will they be staying with us and the dollar value, right. But I think the key thing about if you are running a business probably at the start, right, it's a bit harder to get accurate LTV, right, because LTV usually need many years, then you get proper LTV. Right, not people just use a simple way of doing. I would say 1 divided by the churn rate. Right, usually that's how they get their, I would say, estimated LTV.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. So let's see what is the. Oh yeah, I think we continue to talk about growth, right? So what's your secret to growing in Singapore? You grow beyond Singapore, but first you grow in Singapore, then you go overseas. Maybe you can talk about this process. First, how you grow in Singapore, and then second, how do you expand overseas?
Okay.
Considering that is the formula or the operating model or the services are the same but not overseas?
Right. Okay. So maybe I address the first question first on the secret sauce to growing in Singapore. I don't think it's really a secret sauce, right? But I think there's two key things. I'll say that especially in a B2B sales model, right, we can't really wait for leads or opportunities to happen. It needs to be outbound prospecting. That's what I learned, right? Because the area that we are in requires a lot of kind of education, which are not super obvious. That's why you need to do a lot of outbound prospecting. It's a lot of hard work. Secondly, right, is to make your customers love you. Right, that is where all the referral will come in, and that is where all the retention will also come in. Yeah, so I think the secret sauce to growing in Singapore is really two key things. First is make a product that your customer really loves you. Secondly, right, do not take a passive approach. You need to take a more proactive approach by doing an outbound, I would say, reach out to potential clients.
Okay. Now, I have a question on this, right? Especially for people who want to operate platform services, right? Now, you need a install base or a critical mass in order to be sustainable, right? So how do you compute your critical mass?
Right. To be sustainable, is it?
Yeah. So that you now know that this is the minimal set of customers that I'm completely don't need to worry about survival.
Right. So I think on our end, right, we are usually shooting for the stars, right?
Yeah.
So that's our general direction. But we are talking about looking at sustainability as a whole, right? That's probably I'm assuming that it's a break even, right?
Yeah.
One way to how our compute is more towards what is the projected, I would say, a cost that we're having. Usually for software companies, the biggest cost is labor, right? And based on this, right, what is a rough due value or MRR we are getting per account, and then we just divide by it. Then we roughly know, right, how many accounts we need for this to be a sustainable business.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow, very math question.
Yeah, you're just having two lines across and then say, okay, what is the number that makes sense, right?
Yes.
But in order to have the numbers that make sense, it's again a chicken and egg problem, right? So you must incentivize them to come on board. So when you bring them on board, do you cross subsidize them such that long term you can hit your critical mass, or what else you do? Actually, how you promote to them to come in?
Right. So I think one of the key things here, right, is to know, right, what is the right value that you are providing. I think pricing is a very tough question. To be honest, if you ask me, I'm not the best person in pricing, but I think pricing is pretty key, right? And what kind of value you can provide, such that whatever price you are giving, the customer will be willing to accept.
Yeah.
Right. So for that, I don't have a super good answer, because we don't run like super crazy promotions. Right. That means that you kind of like roughly might be at the rough sweet spot in terms of the pricing side of things really. If we are priced too heavily, that is where probably a promotional tactics will need to come in to lure more people in. Yeah.
Okay. Just now we finished question. You talk about grow in Singapore, right? So we have a question about going overseas and how do you grow and how do you manage overseas people?
Okay. So how we grow in overseas, I would say that one of the we are pretty fortunate that currently we are having quite a number of inbound from overseas. But ultimately, we need to do outbound one if you want to grow further in all these countries, right? But I would say that before COVID, right, me and my other co-founder, Jensen, we actually flew down to Malaysia and Indonesia to do what we did in Singapore to get our 0 to 10.
I see.
So we really just go for events, then we just talk to every single person that we met, right? Went to a F&B event in Malaysia, I think about 2.5 years ago. Yeah, then we really meet anyone that walk past us, we will drag them to our booth and try to I would say understand their issues, right? So that is what we did before COVID. But now with COVID, we can't really go overseas, right? A lot of it needs to be done virtually. It's about current customer base. They love us, then they refer people in, right?
So more word of mouth.
Yes.
So you can actually use a customer promotion, right?
Yeah. So probably one way is to have those kind of like referral strategies in place, that it can be a win-win for everyone.
So in that sense, you don't touch any, your service doesn't touch anything on the regulatory part of any countries, right? So it's just a basic services of timing, people call in, call out, so you can use a standard software.
Yes,
as a platform.
Yeah, because currently they are also using biometric and a punch card.
Sure.
Right? Then probably those also don't have any regulatory issues. Based on what I know of, now don't have lah.
Okay, as long as you don't go into the payroll, then
we don't do
then
payroll.
You are fine lah, because the payroll is different.
Yes.
Sunday different pay, that kind of more things.
Yeah.
Okay. This is just clocking hours and all this. Okay, good. Yeah, there's a 0 to 10. Is there a magic to the number 10? Right. The question is like 0 to hero.
Okay.
But okay, it's actually how you scale, right? How you operationalize stuff.
Right. Yeah. So I think just now I was also sharing about how we get our first 10, right? It's really pure door-to-door knocking. Perhaps the question is there a reason why 10? Right? To be honest, I don't have the best answer there. I think 1 is too little. 1 could be just pure luck, right? Then the other one is 20 or 30 might take too much time.
Yeah.
So I think a 10 is a good gauge lah. It's not 100% accurate, but give us a gauge of, this is potentially could be a repeatable, I would say a repeatable transaction, which shows that there's potential in this solution.
Okay.
Because 1 can really be just luck. 3 maybe also can be luck.
Okay, there's a follow-up question. How do you manage your overseas teams?
So I would say that for us, right, as a company, we also like to practice a remote culture. So overseas, so actually we use a lot of tools, communication tools like Slack, right? These are things that we use to, I would say, communicate with our overseas counterparts. On top of that, we also do have, like I would say, team bonding sessions, so as we are able to build that kind of culture. So every Tuesday, right, we have something as the Bali Tuesday, right? That is where every week we rotate a host where he'll organize virtual activities for the entire team.
I see.
Yeah.
And what do you all do in this party? Virtual party. I don't know how to do virtual party.
Right. So some things that we do is that we do play games. There are some games that can be done online. You know that there's like app-based counters, right?
I don't know. I don't play games.
Oh yeah. So these are things that we do lah. Or I think next week we're having like a chess competition.
I see.
Yeah. So probably throughout the week, some of us will be playing chess with each other. Then next Tuesday is probably the finals. The best of the best will compete each other.
Okay. Interesting. That's a way. Well, now we're moving in the digital world.
My think of ways to, I would say, engage everyone and to make it a very fun place to work at.
Okay. So you are saying that, I saw that you're saying you're going to Series A. What is Series A?
Right. So for this, I would say that we are trying to shoot for our next milestone. Right. So I would say that all these different fundraising kind of levels are all, I would say, it's something like you complete O-level, A-level, that kind of thing. You just only a title.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, we are trying to shoot for our next, I would say, a round of funding. That's why we are trying to do our best during this period.
Okay.
And hopefully we can get good results for everybody.
How much you going to raise in Series A?
This one can't really share here.
Okay. Yeah, it's looking. Yeah, but okay, you'll go out and raise your fund.
Yeah,
so this is the next question that relate to your growth, right? Series A and after. So for the next what's be the 5-year plan for StaffAny?
Right. So I say that 5-year plans, usually 5 years in startup is super long.
Yeah, correct. I was
But
like,
I'll say,
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years super long, right? So I'll say that one of the key things that we want to do is to impact 1 million blue collar workers around the world. That's what
1 million, that's the target.
1 million, right? In 5 years time, that's our big, hairy, audacious goal, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do, right? And we want to be, I would say, the de facto operating system for the blue collar workforce in Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Means
Okay.
like if you go Malaysia, you go Indonesia, you go Brunei, Vietnam, right? You can see a lot of these F&B, retail, or anyone who is operating blue collar workforce using StaffAny as a de facto, like Excel, right? Now they'll be using StaffAny.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have some general questions. Let's start with something that is a very traditional thing. Anything you would do differently if you start again?
Right. So if I start again, what will I
Start
do?
any again.
I think.
Anything you would do differently if you start this project again, start any project.
Right. So I think one thing that I will probably do differently, probably at the start, right? I would say is to be more data driven, right? Because I feel that it's not that we should always I think trust data, right? Because it might be very inhuman to just only trust data, right? But through data, then we can see how are we progressing. So for example, right, probably at the start when I run a sales team, I don't really keep track of all these numbers and metrics, and that is where you wouldn't know that are you guys on the right track or not, right? And if you are blindsided, you don't know where are you heading to, right? That is where results might not come in that fast, and you don't know why, and this wastes a lot of time.
Yeah. Okay.
But now with numbers in place, it's not a means to be inhuman, but it's more for direction. Where should we be going? What are we weaker at? What can we improve on? Yeah.
Okay. Final question. What advice you have for anyone thinking of entrepreneurship? This is very general.
Right.
Okay.
But if I will give advice, I will give one advice. Just try it lah.
Just try.
Yeah, because you will never know, right, what will happen. And I think that time is an opportunity cost, especially for those who are younger, right? You guys got the chance to try. I think it's the best time to try, right? Because that's where liabilities are the least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you're young, you have no commitment. Of course, it's easy.
Yeah, right.
And when you're older, you still can try.
Yeah,
but
you're also trying a lot.
Don't ever get yourself into any serious financial commitment. Then you can try.
Right.
All right. So good. So we'll end tonight with Eugene, and thanks for joining us. And next week, what we're going to do is that we will have another person joining us, also a very young guy, young as Eugene, and that's Sebastian. And we have another new term called Chief Product Officer. So tonight we have Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Product Officer.
Right.
I'm not sure what other titles that they come up with. But thank you very much. We'll see you next week then.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.